Good morning. Wow. It was great to see so many of you in worship last Sunday, and we hope to see many more even this Sunday. For those of you who don't quite feel comfortable coming yet for any reason, but especially for health risks, we completely understand. We just hope you'll continue to watch Bible studies like this on Sunday mornings and continue to join us in worship online. We're going to pray for a vaccine soon so that we'll all feel safe to completely return. But again, I want to thank you for being a part of this 4-week study on the book God and the Pandemic, a Christian reflection on the coronavirus and its aftermath by N.T. Wright. There's no way I could tell you everything that was in this book. It's a pretty fast and quick read. I hope you've gotten it and read along. Well, the author, N.T. Wright, he has urged that we embrace lament as the vital initial Christian response to this pandemic. Roughly 1/3 of the Psalms are lamenting the things are not the way they should be. The Psalms use words of complaint, of question, of sorrow, of anger and frustration, and often enough, bitterness. They are all part of the prayer book of Jesus himself. We all know this fear, the fear that every stranger on the street is a threat, that when we go around in masks and when churches are shut and people are dying with nobody to pray by their bedside, this is a time for lament. For admitting that we don't have easy answers, for refusing to use this crisis as a loudspeaker for what we've been wanting to say in any case, for weeping at the tomb of friends, and for the inarticulate groaning of the Spirit that we talked about last Sunday. The initial calling of the church, first and foremost, is to take place humbly among the mourners. Grief, after all, is part of love. We have to keep going. We tell ourselves we have to be strong. Well, yes, strong like Jesus who wept at the tomb of a friend. Strong like the Spirit who raised Jesus from the dead, but who right now is pleading for us and moaning for us. Many things, after all, actually bring grief to God. In Genesis 6:6, God sees the wickedness of humans, and he doesn't say, well, I've allowed that in order to do something with it. It grieved him to his heart. Mark 14:33 says about Jesus, my soul is disturbed within me, right to the point of death. And he too was quoting Psalm 42 and 43, laments. God has, in fact, delegated the running of many aspects of his world to human beings. In doing so, he has run the risk that they will grieve him to his heart. But when this happens, he will hold us responsible. So how do we live in the present? The church's mission began, according to John 20, with 3 things which have become very familiar to us in recent days. It began with tears, with locked doors, and with doubt. Together they sum up a lot of what we see globally at this time. Tears are in plenty, of course. So many lives cut short. Locked doors? Well, precisely. The fear isn't just of certain people who may have it in for us. It's the fear that every stranger in the street might, without knowing it, give us a sickness which could kill us within weeks. I might be able to give it to them as well. So, lockdown. And then there is doubt. What is all this about? Well, we saw earlier in John's Gospel that the signs, that Jesus displays signs. And these were not signs like earthquakes or famines or plagues or floods. They were not meant to frighten people into submission or belief or to warn them that the world was about to come to the end. They were signs of new life, of new creation. They were signs of God coming into the ordinary and making them extraordinary, coming to bring healing to a world of sickness, giving bread to the hungry, sight to the blind, and life to the dead. They were signs that the world was coming into a new springtime, a new beginning. The way that Christians have behaved in great plagues of the early centuries was a significant factor in contributing the spread of faith. The Christians were being for the world what Jesus had been for Israel, and people took notice. Something new was happening. It was the Christians who built hospitals and hospices, who made education available outside the circles of the rich and the elite, and who took care of the poor. It has been Christians who have visited the prisoners and cared for the wounded and welcomed the strangers and fed the hungry. And they've tended to the sick. In most past ages, that has been done day and night, in good times and in bad, in the Black Deaths and in the bubonic plague, in war and peace, in the slums and in the city and the isolated farmhouses. Clergy and laity alike have done it at considerable and often fatal risk to themselves. The urge to meet the Lord Himself in the faces of the needy, in accordance with Matthew 25, has always been strong. When the present pandemic began to take hold, a passage from the writings of Martin Luther went round and round on the internet. Luther had faced several plagues, and he insisted that preachers and pastors should remain at their post as good shepherds, and that they should be prepared to lay down their lives for their sheep. This is how he said one should think of oneself. I will pray to God that He may be gracious and preserve us. Then I will fumigate to purify the air, give and take medicine, and avoid places and persons where I am not needed, in order that I may not abuse myself, and that through me others may not be infected and inflamed, with the result that I become the cause of their death through my negligence. I have done what He gave me to do, and am responsible neither for my own death or for the death of others. But if my neighbor needs me, I shall avoid neither person nor place, but feel free to visit and help him. Wow, that is gritty wisdom. Luther clearly believed a Christian was to stay and help rather than run away. We are to set up signposts, actions, and symbols, not just words, which speak like Jesus' signs of new creation, of healing for the sick, of food for the hungry, and so on. So this means doing things like helping run food banks, or working in homeless shelters, or volunteering to help those visiting relatives in prisons, and so on. Just as the Jesus followers were showing the officials of the Roman Empire that there was a different way to run society, so there will be signs of God's kingdom that can emerge from creative, healing, and restorative work of church members today. Situations and opportunities will vary, but out of lament of God's people, new possibilities can and do emerge. First, church buildings are not an escape from the world, but they are a bridgehead into the world. So we should therefore celebrate every way in which the living Lord, whom we regularly worship in church buildings, is out and about, bringing healing and hope far beyond the visible limits of just our church property. Jesus does not need church buildings for his work to go forward. Part of the answer to the question, where is God in the pandemic, must be out there on the front lines of suffering and dying, bringing healing and hope. We must, as Jeremiah said, settle down into this regime and seek the welfare of the city where we are. So how do we recover? Perhaps the most vital question of all is how we move back towards whatever a new normal is going to be. Some people have expressed the pious hope that when all this is over, maybe we'll have a kinder and gentler society. Maybe we'll pay our nurses more, or we shall be prepared to give more in taxes to support health services and the poor. We shall celebrate our emergency services, our delivery companies, and all the people who have looked after us. Psalm 72 has a list of priorities that the church should be articulating, not just in speech, but in practical proposals to go at the top of our agendas. This is Psalm 72, verses 1 through 4, and then 12 through 14. Listen. Give the king your justice, O God, and your righteousness to a king's son. May the mountains yield prosperity for the people and the hills in righteousness. May he defend the cause of the poor of the people, give deliverance to the needy, and crush the oppressor. The righteous ruler delivers the needy when they call, the poor and those who have no helper. He has pity on the weak and the needy and saves the lives of the needy. From oppression and violence, he redeems their life. And precious is their blood in his sight. That is what the church, at its best, has always believed and taught, and what the church on the front line has always practiced. In the early days of the church, the Roman emperors and local governors didn't know much about Christianity and what it really was. Yet they knew that this strong and strange movement of people were always banging on about the needs of the poor. Wouldn't it be nice if people today had that same impression? So what does it mean in a world where some of us find being locked down a minor nuisance while others are still crowded in refugee camps or in third world cities where social distancing is about as easy as flying to the moon? We need to think globally, and we need to act locally. And that's what Pelham Baptist Church has been about during this time of the pandemic. The building may have been temporarily closed, but the church has always been open. Open in the ways that you've continued to support each other and to support your neighbors and your family and your friends. Open in the ways that you've supported our ongoing ministries, like feeding the homeless at Triune Mercy Center, or giving food or fresh vegetables out of our own garden to Greer Relief. We thank you for helping us keep the church open and alive. We love you, and we look forward to seeing you again. With, of course, your masks on. Have a good day.